Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Dare to Be Fearless. So, this week I am in LA from London. And if you follow me on social media, if you don't follow at Alexa_Curtis and Dare to Be Fearless, I just came off of a really cool segment with KTLA about cold calling and getting out of your comfort zone and really being fearless in business. And so, with this particular show, what I really like to hone in on is tips and tricks for you guys who are perhaps in your 20s, like I am, but really want to hit peak success in your career. Now, in this day and age, all of you want that instant, fast success. And I am living proof that it takes a really long time, and I'm not even near where I would like to be in 10 years. And so, with the guests that I have on, I really like to have people on who have put in the work, who have really hit success, not at 18, 19 through TikTok, but really through following the steps that it takes to be number one, fearless, but also really build a successful career. So if you're familiar with the company Violet Grey or Diane von Furstenberg, which I love the wrap dress, it's an iconic dress. I've got on now the founder of the board, April Uchitel. She is here. You are incredible. We were just talking about Instagram. Aside from that, you just have like a beautiful family and life. And, you know, you went from working in tech and fashion, from Violet Grey, DVF, to now you have a really larger consulting company. So, you know, I want to talk to you about imposter syndrome, the building blocks to being successful, but walk back from the beginning.
Okay. So I originally from Boulder, Colorado.
I love Boulder.
I moved to LA in the 90s and spent about 25 years in fashion. And, you know, back in the day here in Los Angeles, it was not a lot of fashion. It was very denim heavy in terms of, you know, the wholesale world that I lived in. And I worked at a company called BCBG, which is still around. I moved with them to New York and spent 9 years at DVF. And that's really where, you know, we watched this incredible rise of contemporary. Back in the day, it was really difficult to really build in the same way that you can now in terms of access to audience, and it's very much trade shows and showing up in all the ways that is kind of a slow pace. I always say about fashion, it's the most frenetic industry, but it moves like a snail. And so building a company over time, when I started at DVF, it was about 6 million. When I left, it was about 360 million. And just having been part of that ride, through international growth, through retail, through everything else, and obviously with such an amazing, iconic human at the helm, which was just an amazing experience in itself. But that brought me to New York, and I then went into tech. And so in my situation, I stayed always on the sales side at fashion. And you know, your first point of wanting to get there so fast, and I think I did the opposite. I overstayed my welcome at a few places, and really was, you know, kind of coming out of a scarcity mindset and wanting to make sure I had some stability and a 401k, and therefore kind of moved slower than a lot of my peers who were jumping every year or two and, you know, doubling their salary. And it just, my comfort zone wasn't there yet. And so I moved at a slower pace, and finally got to this point where I realized like I was in an industry that I was no longer seeing the future in, and really looking at digital and looking at what was happening in tech, and being at an age where I had to make that move. And you kind of end up doing, you know, side steps and back steps, and it's never really up one direction. And I think that's one of my biggest things to call out, is that it's like a jungle gym. You know, it doesn't all just go up. And so for me, it was a moment to say that this particular path I'm on, I really feel is a dead end. And ultimately, you know, I say that I didn't want to be a 50-year-old Garmento, and that was the path I was on. And I just had to get on the digital bus and kind of grab the, you know, the tailpipe. And so I became part of a startup called Spring. It was a mobile app that was kind of like a mobile mall. So we aggregated thousands of brands. And so I was the chief brand officer, and I was able to take my 25 years of working in fashion and apply all of those challenges to technology, where I really saw us kind of being the phoenix rising from the ashes. And I was 20 years older than the founder. So that was a huge step back, changing from having, you know, VP titles and big teams and international teams and office and assistant to 4 of us in a WeWork, you know, and I'm running around Manhattan with an app on my phone that I was pitching into companies, and people literally said, I saw you running down West Broadway. And that was me. And it was just a whole crazy exchange of a whole new language, you know, drinking through a fire hose, and really rethinking, and building new skills. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to come from going back to school or going, you can do this shift. And I know people use the word pivot a lot, and to me, it's really about evolution. Pivot seems like that no longer works. I have to go here. And while there is something about that, it's still like that is leading you somewhere else. And so for me, that pivot, that evolution into technology was just opened this whole other world of access. It gave me a reason to go and talk to thousands of brands. And nothing that I had thought about prepared me for what that now has brought me to with the board. But when you do that look back, every single thing happened for a reason.
One executive I interviewed a few months ago, he said something about, your career is not, he said it's more like a jungle gym. That it's very similar to what you said. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's so true. Talk to me about growing up in Boulder, because I grew up in a small town. I've been to Boulder. It's an incredibly small town. Yeah. I mean, were you always this entrepreneurial or eager to escape?
I actually went to Longmont High School, and I just always thought I would do something in fashion. So I worked at retail. I worked at long gone Contempo Casuals. For those, my generation, it was crazy accessories and really trendy. This is way before there was fast fashion, but it was very much shoulder pads and bike shorts, and you imagine in a hardcore 80s. And then I worked at a Benetton. I managed that, and I just assumed I would go into the buying, world and kind of get a job at Bloomingdale's one day. And when I got to Los Angeles, I didn't even realize there was a whole other side of it that sold to the buyers. And so that's really how I discovered the wholesale side, and which is where I ended up starting my career. But coming out of Colorado, it was very much like, that's not here. So no. The fashion world was not there, and that's why I went to LA first.
So what did you study in school?
So I studied sociology and psychology.
It's nothing like what you do.
No. And it was, but funny enough, I landed in a sales role, which is both those things. If you think about human behavior and the psychology of selling, the psychology of really understanding who your customer is. So in a weird way, it does fully apply, to that type of a trajectory. And I think about people in college when you really still don't know exactly where you're going to go. What are those things you can learn that have the critical thinking attached to them, the things can be applied to multiple areas of a business. And I have an 18-year-old who's a sophomore in college, and my biggest Achilles heel was the finance side. And so she's in the business school at Wisconsin, and I'm really pushing her. She's really good at math. She just did an internship at a VC to kind of get that muscle around being able to read a P&L, being really comfortable with numbers, which was never my skill set. And so later in my career, I was kind of handicapped and had CFOs weaponize it against me. When you have kind of a whole dark spot that you're really relying on someone else's skills and knowledge. To me, that empowering yourself with those basics, because that's underlying any business. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you open a salon to start some CPG company, like you really don't want to be in the dark on the finances of the company. And so to me, I think getting anything in that world, economics, accounting, really understanding margins, really thinking about the just profit and loss in general, if you're building at all, is what I tell every young person, because I didn't have that. And it was, back to, you mentioned imposter syndrome earlier, it did make me feel like maybe I wasn't smart enough to be in that room, or, I should have all of this nailed. I should be excellent at all these things to be able to advance. And I think that's something that women also really hold on to, is feeling they don't want to bullshit their way through, so they really want to learn it, and so they tend to move slower, where I know a lot of men just feel like, I'll figure it out, and I'll get in there and then I'll figure it out. And I think that's also a piece of advice of knowing that no one in that room has it all figured out, every aspect of it. And so it's really the desire and ability to be really honest about what you know and you don't know, because we also think sometimes you have to kind of fake it till you make it, which to me is the sister to that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I've actually done a lot of research on that topic, and it's so common, right? Fake it till you make it. I think it stems, though, from imposter syndrome. Yeah. It's like the only way to counteract imposter syndrome is to fake it. And so some people are like, that's a great thing. Some people are like, it's a bad thing. I think the confidence side of faking it till you making it is definitely good, but it also can put you on a different level in terms of then when you walk away from whoever you're faking it in front of, you're still stuck with the same completely. You in the mirror,
and it
right?
just stays with you. It doesn't leave, and it kind of compounds over time. versus being able to really say like, hey, this is the first time I've done this. Can you guys walk me through this? Is so much more empowering to be vulnerable in that moment. And quite frankly, majority of the people in that room will be really excited to help and will be really happy someone else called it out. And I had a situation when I was at Spring and we were literally going around the room and was like, holy shit, like, don't come to me, don't come to me. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Acronyms that you don't use in fashion that are used in technology. And I was like, I'm going to pretend I know what they're talking about. I'm going to just kind of, and then the guy before me said, I'm so sorry. The CTO said, I'm not sure what that means. And I was like, oh my God, thank you, because I was going to try and like figure it out as from context of what everyone else was saying. And the person who should know the most, the CTO said, I'm not sure what that means. And, it was such a lesson for me to be able to be honest, and to let them know what you know and what you don't know, as opposed to pretend you know something you don't, because it does tend to, catch up to you.
Can you please tell me what you would say to your boss, like a younger you, or what you would say to somebody who now works for you and is too scared to say, I don't know what I'm doing, or help me?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a sentence? Like, what do you say?
It's funny. I was just talking to my daughter who is applying for part-time jobs, and she got a job at a store in Wisconsin, and she called me. She's like, guess how much it pays? And she said $13 an hour, and we both kind of started laughing. She's like, and I said, well, but you didn't ask how much it paid when you applied for it. And she's like, I don't know how to do that. Like, I felt really weird in the moment saying, and by the way, how much is this? Like, is it even worth it for me to take this call? And I said, you just say, do you mind, giving me a sense of the compensation range? And that's a very easy way to say, like, how much are you going to pay me? But also saying, like, can I get a sense of not only where would I start, where will I go? But you come from this place where you sound less like, I don't know if this is worth my time, to like, let me really understand, what this opportunity is. And so it's those little phrasings, that make it, again, seem professional and vulnerable while, also not whiny or demanding, right? And so I have an amazing team, young girls, and one who newly graduated from UCLA, and she's very much finding her way. And so I do a lot of coaching, where I say, Lisa, you need to tell me when this is this, and it's really hard. And it's hard, if you have someone ahead of you who is putting a lot of demands on you, to say, like, can we just take 5 minutes? And yet the minute someone does that, you're like, oh my God, you're right. Like, I just assumed all these things, and I'm going at my pace and you're going at your pace. And so really advocating for yourself is so important. And the younger you are and the newer you are is the time to do it. When you've been in that job for 2 years, it's really hard to say, by the way.
I know. Do you think that those are kind of confidence building tools, though, or is that something more about being more forward? I mean, what's the main problem you're seeing with this generation, and why they're not getting the role they want or able to facilitate these conversations?
I think it is this sense of, everyone else looks like they're killing it. Everyone else looks like they know it all. Everyone else looks like they've jumped from here to here to here because of what you're seeing on social. And the reality is it doesn't move that fast. And so my generation, looking at younger generations, especially in the Gen Z world, where they expect a director title after 6 months, and you're like, whoa, and so there's a real disconnect between how we had to really kind of go through the trenches. And that was our pace at that time. That has completely changed. Like, now we're all drinking through that fire hose. I'm working with men in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are just like, shit, I got to figure out AI. Some have gone to MIT and taken classes. Some are just on YouTube every night and testing and learning every tool that's out there, because this constant upskilling, is not going to change. And so the reality of everyone being able to say, okay, this is what I'm learning, this is what I think I need to learn, and ask people that work around you and are above you on the org chart. This is what I just coached my daughter through for her internship, is grab everybody and take them for a coffee and link everybody in and ask, how did you get here? What was your story? Like, everyone wants to talk about themselves.
Always.
And if you can kind of use that as a way to learn without saying, like, tell me, what I should do. It's like, what did you do? And, it's really then, they'll say, I should have done this. I wish I would have done that. And that's what she just realized on this internship, that, everyone's journey coming out of Ivy Leagues, coming out of like big firms, always has this, I wish I should, I might, it would be better if, but you should, and there's this passing down of knowledge and experience if you just ask.
Everything is all sales too, right? Being able to sell yourself, your idea, your story, sell for somebody else. I really think it's a full 360, and when you can crack the code on how to sell like anything, you should always be able to sell sell yourself. I want to come back to what you said about, when you're hiring and what you're seeing with Gen Z. But originally you said you started at BCBG. When I started, BCBG actually gave me my first chance.
No way.
I had started as a blogger. Leilena.
Leilena Leva? Yeah.
Yes. I cold emailed her when I was 14. It was like a moderate, I think, form of harassment because I did not stop following up. And I was like, I'm a 14-year-old fashion blogger. I'm from the middle of nowhere. Can I come to Fashion Week? And every season she gave me, and I have reached out to her since and been like, you really are, I think, the reason I got the confidence to be started. She never replies, but I will say that that brand to me has such a soft spot, and it's not the most current brand at this point, right? There's so much fast fashion. There's the Violet Grays. But for me, that brand has such a soft spot. So for you, what was it like when you started there?
So Max Azria and his brother Serge, were running the company at the time, and then they split off multiple divisions. And so they tried to do a more contemporary junior line and then a more, at the time, bridge line. And that was, one was called Parallel, one was called To the Max. Like they did all these kind of, attempts at diffusion lines in various areas, and everyone just wanted the mothership. So I got to play in some of those new business they were trying to build, and which is why they moved me to New York to kind of steer the helm on a new business. And so it was an incredible experience to have a parent company say, like, can you go start this thing? It's like, here's the seed, and it was pretty intense. That's when it started to be like the 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock nights, and I think all of us who worked in those, the 90s, 2000s, where I would work 3 months straight with no day off, and I would get 1 day off for every weekend I worked, and not enough time to take those days off. And I would be in the super shuttle coming home with garment bags at 10 o'clock at night, trying to drag them up the steps of my apartment, and then back down at 7 a.m. to get to the studio to steam them before the clients came in. And then when I was running teams at DVF, and we'd be at, the Javits Center in New York, and my team would be like, where's my car voucher? And I was like, grrr, but it's just a different world. And, the expectations shift over and over. And so watching these generations kind of mash up and meld, and where there was a lot of friction because we work so hard and you guys walk in and expect it to be like this, to now like, oh, this stuff is hard, and it's changing. And we're also, what I'm seeing and what I was really fortunate to experience firsthand at Spring was my being a super tenured senior executive didn't mean anything. I had the exact same voice as a 22-year-old. We all had equity in the company. We were all shareholders. We were building a startup from scratch. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, this is the world, of like my knowledge and network coming together with their digital prowess, coming together with everyone's different ways that they shop and consume, and bringing all that knowledge together to build something interesting. And so I've kind of carried that through with me, in what I do. And as I work with so many senior executives who've moved out of big jobs, Google, Meta, Apple, Disney, Walmart, into now very entrepreneurial roles, they're also now kind of going back a little bit to kind of tap into, how do I market myself? What am I doing on TikTok? What am I doing on, LinkedIn and Substack? And so it is this just constant education. And as you know, new platforms every day, Substack being now the one that so many creators are moving to and so many brands are building community on. And you kind of have to want to stay in the game and, keep paying attention. And other people are like, it's exhausting. Like, I'm just going to stay in this road. And so I think it just really depends on the person,
Are you a Substacker?
I follow a lot. I don't write one. But, it just gets overwhelming, the amount of, I push them all to a Saturday to try and sit and really read through them, the ones I think that are really interesting. But the people that do it really well, it's a pretty amazing medium.
Yeah. I'm a diehard Beehive. Do you know what Beehive is?
I've heard of it, but I've not spent any time on it.
Yeah. My friend started Beehive, but I definitely think it's the more Gen Z. Like, Substack was around for a while, and I think the way that Beehive has evolved with community and growth in the newsletter space has like brought Substack into a limelight.
Interesting.
And then MailChimp, I think, is kind of now just at the bottom for like more, direct to businesses, B2B instead of B2C. So when you say that, the corporate to the startup, it's not the word emasculating, but was that strange for you?
So when it happened to me at Spring, I would literally see my peers, like the whole team at Bergdorf. So I saw at a conference one time, and they're just like, oh my God, what are you doing? Are you selling an app? And then 4 months later, they'd be like, how'd you know how to get in there? Like, we need to get out of here. This sense of like, I am going to be the dinosaur. The future is over there and we're on the bus, the boat that's sinking. And so, it was literally taking steps back. And then as, fashion has changed a lot, it's gotten really challenging. I moved into beauty really organically, having built a marketplace where I worked with multiple kind of industries. Started to work with Estee Lauder and Charlotte Tilbury and all these brands at Spring. And when I got to LA and I took the CEO role at Violet Grey, it was another 130 brands. And what would happen all the time is they would be reaching out, I need a president, I need, looking for this formulator, the sales agent. And I slowly, over my course of my career was always connecting and mentoring people. And so that was the foundation because I had such a broad network and just this 360 view into all of the siloed challenges that companies were having, and then now individual consultants were having, where everyone's just home in their office, moving a business forward. And so the board really came organically from, creating one point of sale technically for talent that has been in all these incredible companies and brought amazing brands to life that are now applying their skills across multiple companies, which I really think is the future. I don't think you need to sit in a very hierarchied role for 5 years and, kind of climb the ladder in a way that skills are so specialized now. There's certain things you need for a certain amount of time. Obviously you need operators, et cetera. But if you were to look at your career and like, okay, now I've got to figure this thing out, who can help me get from here to here, doesn't mean you have to hire a C-suite.
No. So when you're hiring or when you're working with Gen Zers, what are they doing wrong? We can get into what they're doing right, but like I really want to know what they're doing wrong.
I see them the most as founders. So the board is like 15 years plus. So my community is very senior and C-suite, but we help a lot of emerging brands. And so especially in technology, I work closely with a 24-year-old founder for the last 2 years who's building a tech platform. And she started in college, and it was kind of like the Tinder for fashion, and it was a styling app. It's called Mata. And she does affiliate with, My Teresa and Bloomingdale's, Saks, et cetera. And so it's been a really amazing, funny enough, like almost a two-way relationship where I'm, consulting with her, but I'm also picking her brain a lot along the way. And so that's been really cool to see how she's building, completely pushing into an area that she didn't have any skills in, but she saw a need and a problem to be solved in the way that she wanted to shop and how she wanted to access. And I find it just completely impressive. And so I would set her up with meetings with like this team from Estee Lauder, this team from Farfetch, and watch this young girl with a very, slight voice sit on a Zoom with, 5 very seasoned 25 to 30-year-old, beauty executives. And in the beginning, they'd be like, oh, she's so cute, and she'd start to talk. And then at the end, they're like, holy shit, and just watch that shift of like, you just can't judge. No. And on the reverse, the same thing too. You may look at someone who seems, they've been there for a long time and, yet they have so much incredible knowledge and deep relationships and networks to be leveraged. And, I kind of go back to that mashup. It was where it gets really interesting. And I'm seeing that happen more and more. And it's just about respecting both sides.
How did you guys meet?
With Madison. So we were connected through a friend who did her PR. And so, at the end of the day, this is what it's all about, your network. I've really built this company on my network and the network's network. And, I kind of say the cream rises to the top. Mm-hmm. When you go to a company and you're like, okay, you, not you, it's like who's on the same plane in terms of integrity. Who would you really trust with sharing vulnerabilities to? Who are you really impressed by in the way that they do things? And those people tend to stay in your peripheral, and you see them, they go to a company, you're over here, you're over there. I always used to say in fashion, it was, that assistant buyer is going to be the GM one day. So, you never burn a bridge, mm-hmm. even if that person is horrible and toxic, you just don't know where they show back up
Kill
later.
Them with kindness.
Yeah, completely. There's no winning, from kind of tearing someone down. And the people that do it eventually are the ones that just, become literally toxic. By that point, mm-hmm. no one is inviting them to anything, and, you've alienated yourself.
You were at DVF for 9 years, mm-hmm. right? Was there any advice along the way DVF gave you? Anything that stood out?
She in so many ways, her whole thing is you can have a man's life in a woman's body, very empowering from that perspective. But then on the other side, she's like, but something always has to give. It's either there's the your career, your relationship, your time with your children. Like they can't all be number one at the same time. And I think that was really amazing advice where, we try to somehow divide that time equally. And it's just, there's times when this is in front, and for me right now, building a company, I know that like that's jumped over maybe my romantic relationship because I'm like, okay, you're good, we're fine. It's been 22 years. Like I'm working on career and kids right now. You know what I mean? And to be able to have that level of like, great, go, I got you, kind of partner is amazing because they can't all fire equally at the same time.
What is the secret? How do you stay married that long?
I think for us it's like traveling.
You mean traveling together or apart?
He was a photographer and he traveled the world when we first were together, and he still travels a lot. And I, having time away really helps. Yet so many people work together and they've been together I have friends that have been, business partners and life partners for, decades. And that's a whole other thing. But having your own thing is really critical, and having someone who is just your biggest cheerleader.
Can you explain to me what Violet Grey is? Because the founder of Violet Grey is also pretty incredible. But you were CEO.
Yeah. So the business launched in, I think, 2015, and I came in 2017. It's really, the whole idea behind it was very much taking, a very crowded space, right? Beauty, and there's a million things available. And she created the Violet Code, which allowed every single product to be tested before they stocked it. So really, we always said that we're selling trust. So if you can choose from 10 mascaras, these are the ones we recommend. And so they were able to go in to companies like Chanel, who never lets you cherry pick the product catalog. You generally, if you're a retailer stocking a brand like that, you take everything. Like that's how the game is played. But because they had such a heavy lens on the media aspect and the way it looked and felt, and it was really brand building. The content is what they really are known for, and this real kind of Vogue interview magazine kind of vibe of sexy and very much luxury, really aspirational of like, I want to be that girl type thing. And it stemmed from the founder having spent a lot of time in, the makeup chair herself and asking tons of questions to the makeup artist. And it's like, where can I buy this stuff? Like, and I didn't know that was that ingredient, or, the lack of education around beauty products and what they do and how they work. And so creating a very editorialized version of beauty, and then and by the way, you can also buy it here. So it really started in kind of more of a media space, and then moved into an e-commerce space, and then they opened a physical store on Melrose Place, and it's just a real beautiful, feels like you're in a French apartment. And so the whole experience of luxury beauty is what put them on the map. And most companies I talk to, they all want to launch a Violet Grey because it really does kind of set this certain tone. It kind of contextualizes you like, oh, if you're a Violet Grey, you're approved. You're on this level of Chanel, Tom Ford, brands. And so from a product positioning perspective, new brands, really want that stamp of approval, and then they can go to Sephora, Ulta, et cetera, from there. And so it was really a launch pad for a lot of companies. We launched Augustina's Botter, which is now, a huge skincare brand, and we carried them first. And so getting, bringing things to market in a real discovery way that I think Barney's used to be really great at, rest in peace. But that was really an incredible retailer who really did take time to build brands. And, the business of beauty is very much, as we know, margin, scale, newness, everything from your wholesale to your direct to consumer. And most people are, every season it's, kind of pendulums are swinging. And we all saw direct to consumer, kind of go crazy, which is, again, when I was in fashion, watching that coming, and then realizing, when I started Spring, I started with Warby Parker. At the time, Everlane had just launched, Casper had just launched, Harry's Razors launched. These were all the first D2C brands, Nasty Gal. And it was really amazing. And I would bring in those founders to talk to brands like Ulla Johnson and Rebecca Minkoff about the digital aspect, because these guys were deep in wholesale, and watching, again, those worlds start to merge. And then Harry's started to get carried to Barney's, so it was really interesting to watch that ride. And what I saw at that point was every brand was being built, very much about gated, not sharing information. That's my contact. And COVID kind of tore that all up, where people realized we're deeply connected.
Yeah.
And it really helps to help each other.
I love that you bring up Barney's because I remember my young days when like Fashion Week was at Lincoln Center and walking by Barney's and then Balthazar, and I was like 14 and I didn't even have a credit card. I was like alone in New York. It was just the best thing. Are all Barney's closed?
Yeah, sadly. I mean, the name was sold off. I think, they're licensing or talking about licensing things. But it was really just an incredible era, truly gone days. And, you look at Dover Street and the Webster, and there's a lot of amazing brands, 4510 out of Dallas, the Conservatory, that are doing, kind of their own versions of, this kind of multi-boutique environment. Fred Siegel, who also is now gone,
I know.
Which is so sad.
When I got the email about that one actually shocked me. Yeah. I mean, I was really, because there's a Fred Siegel on Sunset. But that's a bit, it
was. You're right.
Did they take that? Was
totally.
Because there was two of them, right?
I'm assuming that is gone, but I haven't even looked, to be honest. But yeah, the original one on Melrose, and they used to have one in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And it was the place to be. It was the place to go.
Like the Hills days.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? Okay, so Violet Grey, it's a very saturated market. I mean, with the Glossier, and you've got Sephora and you have Ulta, which obviously sells these other companies. So why did this make sense? I mean, how did this hit?
I mean, I think it really, because it did cut through the noise with content. It was doing beautiful photography. Most companies, if you look at the economics, you take the brand's assets and you publish it on your website. And Violet Grey was shooting all of the content for themselves, and they were really differentiating the look and feel. And the customer experience, very much targeting a luxury consumer, someone who's going to easily spend $300 on a serum. And so brands like Vintner's Daughter launched there, Barbara Sturm, was launched there, and Gucci Westman. I remember Gucci and David, her husband, coming in when they were launching her beauty line and literally sitting in the store with them and like showing how it's going to look next to everything. It was just this real iconic place to vision your brand in. And so while it wasn't doing, the hundreds of millions of dollars in volume, it was very much brand positioning play. And so brands just kind of looked at it as an advertising opportunity, to be in company of those really premium products. And then to have any kind of exclusivity, was always key too. And so it's still, it's also, Goop has something similar. So Goop also does a lot of, bringing new brands to market, is very much aspirational in the way that brands see themselves. Like, I want to start there. There and there, and then getting into the Sephoras and the Ultas, the Bluemercuries, the Detox, Credos. There's just some nuances, that are like, this is better for that brand than that brand. But still, it's a big lift. And I had been on the fashion side, and watching that world really, really change, and all of the closures there. Matches is gone. It's the same, kind of now merging Neiman's, Saks. It's just all wild to watch.
I can see you at brunch with Gwyneth Paltrow. Like, are you friends with her?
I've met her a few times. I know a lot of people on her team. And
now when I think of you, I think of like Goop and just Perfect Skin and like the whole thing.
Yeah, and she's done an insane job of creating a lifestyle brand and business, and everything that they've touched, from the Netflix special to the stores to just really, really forward, ahead of so many things, building community in a really big way. And not being afraid to have conversations around, the vagina candle and, menopause and the things that have been taboo for so long. And it just takes a few people to kind of break ground, and then everyone else, can come through in those conversations. And we're working with the men's skincare brand, where I think men's skincare is really interesting and where that's going. And yet, most people don't really think about their skincare, most guys. And yet I have a 15-year-old son who is obsessed with fragrance and obsessed with skincare, and has to be TikTok, because it's just wild to watch this generations. And, he knows more about dry down and ingredients and fragrance than I do. And so there's certain cycles that you see, that continue to come through, but it takes like a Drunk Elephant or, other brands like that break through and then get all the copycats, and then, things start to move into other areas. Clean beauty, for sure. There was the 11-step program, and, everything from glass face to, as you've seen on TikTok, and it's just trend driven in so many different ways that is not really what heritage brands are built around. And so watching those, trying to figure out the right space to show up to gain that consumer. That's, we just did something with Beauty Independent, interviewed a lot of us at the board about Clinique and where they're at. They're being, kicked out of Sephora.
Are they? Why?
Just don't see it as a high performer. And yet, so they have a program called No Stupid Questions, which is great. And they put hypotheticals out there, and then they, go to beauty executives and consultants and say, what would you do with this brand? And so it was a really fun exercise. And you start to see those strategic thinkers to think about how do you evolve something that's been around for, 20, 30 years. And yet you want to build something that's sustainable, right? When you start a brand, if you're a young founder. And so there's that quick thought of like, I'll sell my company for X, going back to what you were saying about, taking your time to get there and building something of real substance, or those quick wins of, I got it to here in maybe the not, highest integrity way, but to get it to a certain number that I could sell it, right? And so watching those stories shift where now valuation has changed dramatically, what investors are looking for has completely changed. It used to just be able to buy tons of customers, and that world of performance marketing has changed. And all of these industries have all of these niche industries. And so when I think about this next generation coming up, there's so many pockets of where you can start to just, again, build this base to where you want to get to. But you can't just get here. It just doesn't work for anybody.
You need to walk, not run. And I think because, again, of social media, I mean, I interview founders, right, in a sense, for a living. And I always find some of the younger generations of them that I've interviewed or whatnot. I mean, in my opinion, if you have an intention of selling a company, and that's the reason you started a company, I've never met someone successful whose intention is to sell the company and they've ever sold a company.
No, because they're going to make decisions based out of just that end goal versus, is it about the right product? Is there a sustainability component? Who is my target customer? What is my mission and vision? And if their mission and vision is just to sell a company, then it's probably not going to be a great product.
No.
It's probably not going to have a great story. And, I think the customers are just too smart at this point. Look at what's happening, just celebrity brands in general. With Selena Gomez, she's nailed it. She's done an incredible job. There's many others that, you don't even know if they're still around, after there was a lot of hype around them in the beginning. And it just goes back to, do you have the authority to be in that space? Is there real integrity around what you're doing? Is this a land grab? And I think people can tell that pretty quickly. I
will also say that with the topic of, say, Gwyneth Paltrow, with what she's done with Goop, with what Reese Witherspoon has done with Hello Sunshine, would you agree that a lot of these high-profile celebrities who end up starting companies, even Kim Kardashian with Skims, they do that because a lot of times the career as a celebrity can be fleeting, right? I mean, you could almost get canceled instantly nowadays. Yeah. Anything can screw you over. So when you go and create an actual solid product that isn't you as the brand, but allows people to pull into that, you can pull into that fan base to elevate that brand, that's a security for them, because perhaps just the world of acting and whatnot is
There's
not
less security.
Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Some of them, they end up doing production companies, they do like what Reese has done an incredible job, but it's based on female, voices and female empowerment, and it's such a through line to everything that they do, and it's so clear in the mission and the vision, and that team does an insane job. And we did a project with them. We did their pop-up for her book club, and her book club is another amazing thing. And I think it really works because it's really her, and it's really her voice and how she wants the legacy to be. And I do think diversifying is important, not having all your eggs in one basket. And if you have an audience that can be monetized, and it's an opportunity to do that in a way that really speaks to something that you care about. So, if you're going to use your platform to promote women's health and wellness, to like Naomi Watts I worked with, I was the interim CEO at Onda Beauty, and she was a co-founder, and she's pushed heavy into the menopause space and launched a brand called Stripes. And we'd had many conversations about it for well over a year and a half before she actually did it. And she was actually kind of terrified of doing it. And does that take away from her acting? Does that somehow, does she lose credibility in that? But that conversation was very important to her because she went into menopause in her 30s. And so she, just knew that space needed a voice and that she had a platform. And that's what I mean by it was very much authentic and part of her story. And it wasn't to really just commercialize her name, but it's like, there's an opportunity I have here. And she'd obviously been in beauty having Onda. And so when you see those that really are who they are, and it doesn't, she's just insane with, everything she does, and it doesn't take anything away. She can figure out to do both. Does Meryl Streep need a beauty brand? Probably not. You know what I mean? So it's like, but it has to be something that you really, really are excited about. And then you have to know that it's a lot of work, and even if you do have an amazing team, if you're going to put yourself out there as a founder, like you really have to show up. And I think those that are successful, they really get that.
I assume across the years of your career, correct me if I'm wrong, you've perhaps dealt with imposter syndrome, insecurity, anxiety surrounding whether or not you'll become successful.
Yeah.
Any stories?
It's funny because you think about the look back, Steve Jobs talks about it. There's in a famous college speech that he gives, and it really is that looking back as to all the things that got you there. I think trusting that you're on the right path without having to have it totally figured out, is so key. And it's what I try and tell myself still. I'm 57. I have a 90-year-old father who does 400 push-ups 3 times a week. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to be around for a while probably. And so what does the next 20 years of my career look like? It's not like we don't retire at 65 anymore. There's just look at the Rolling Stones. It's just incredible examples out there of like a long, passionate, full life. And so to me, it's like, what are you really excited about? It doesn't mean, follow your passion. I think if you listen to Scott Galloway, who has he talks about this a lot. It's just like, fuck your passion. It's like, find something you're really good at that you can make money at doing. That's his take. And it's really somewhere in the middle there of like, okay, you have to be motivated to move forward. But just know that there's no end game. Like there is really no end game. It's not like when I get here, I'll be happy. When I get here, I'll have everything. When I get here, like you keep moving the goalposts for yourself. If you are a motivated person, you get closer, then you just set your goals and keep setting your goals. And then you look back, you're like, whoa, how did I get here? And it's really in those daily kind of intentions where you're trying to get to and learning a lot about manifestation. We get a little woo-woo when you get into your middle age and you start to look ahead towards your mortality and also look behind to what you've been able to experience and just be really grateful, especially in this very divided world that we live in. And, knowing that we're all truly not that dissimilar and, what we want and how, the lives we want to live. Taking the Instagram reel, off the table about what a perfect life looks like and just, a real fulfilling life. And, those are the questions to just constantly be asking ourselves all along the journey. But I think, the imposter syndrome piece of it is just, if you can rephrase that for yourself, not like, I don't belong here. Like, how did I get here? They're going to find out I don't belong here. They're going to find out I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. That's a sense of when I go back to no one has it all figured out. Like my CTO in the room who'd been at Google, was just like, I don't know what this word means. You know what I mean? And I think being able, like I said, to be vulnerable in those moments, to say like, listen, this is the first time I've come across this. So when I was the CEO of Violet Grey, I would go into meetings and I'm just like, okay, I can bullshit this, or I can say, guys, I've actually never done this thing that we need to do before, right? And some people will be like, okay, great, let's go. And other people are like, oh God, you're supposed to know this, you're the boss. And those are the voices I have in my head. Like there's going to be half the team is going to be like, okay, why is this idiot running the company? And the other half will be like, we got you, let's go, And so it's a little bit of, you have to, read the room. You have to understand a bit of who is in that room. And then, you kind of find your cheerleaders, and you find the people that are also thinking about things the way you're thinking about them. And those are the cohorts that you kind of carry through in your career. And if I were to, go back to all the people that followed me to the board, is because of how we interacted over many, many years in that very clear, transparent way. So when I was pitching a tech company to someone who's like, what is this and why are you doing this? That vulnerability that I shared of like, I'm doing this because I really see this future and you do not see it, and then they're like, wait, do I see it? You start to change the conversation just by having one.
I love that. And I like that you mentioned Scott Galloway, because it's a great, no bullshit, right to the point.
Yeah.
What do you do in a day? Like, do you have a morning routine?
I live in Laurel Canyon, and so I can walk across to the top of a hike, which is amazing.
Nice.
And so I do that almost every morning. It's like a 45-minute loop, and that kind of resets me. And listen to podcasts. Usually I listen to Pivot a lot. The Daily and Smartless are my top 3. And so, one's entertaining, one's informative. And then now that I don't drive to an office like I did when I was at Violet Grey, I work out of the house, and Pretty much Zoom all day long, which is a lot, and then generally work late nights. And so I'm in the building mode and can do a lot of midnights in a row when you're excited to be building something. And I remember when I was first starting to build on a Saturday, I was working 8 o'clock at night, and my daughter was like, "I'm so sorry that you're working so late." I'm like, "Oh, I'm having so much fun." It's really, it has to speak to you if you're willing to put that time in, but it's the connection to the people that I have with every single day. Like, I talk to brands, I talk to members, I talk to new members, and it's a way to hear all these stories. And I go back to kind of connecting dots, which is what I've been really, I think my superpower is over many, many years of knowing who's going to be amazing with who and who needs to know this person because they can really help them. And it just comes organically. When I meet someone, like, oh my God, who she needs to meet? It just has always been part of my helping everyone move forward. And so there's just a joy when you can make those connections that are really fruitful for each other, and realize that there's just the idea of scarcity, that there's not plenty for everybody. It's so crazy, when people kind of come from that space. And that's something I've just tried to debunk for years. And generosity is underrated.
There's always enough room for
totally
another successful person, a good idea.
Yeah.
What makes you fearless?
I think it's just to go for it. Like, just give it a try. I feel like I definitely am not the smartest person in the room, and I'm definitely able to say, like, who can I talk to who knows this, right? And I think knowing that if you're a respected and respectful person, that there's kind of nobody that in the right situation wouldn't want to share something, share some knowledge, share a network, share an idea, workshop an idea with you. And that to me makes me fearless, because I feel like I'll know someone who's going to help me figure this out.
Of course.
As opposed to I have to figure it all out by myself. And I think especially women, sometimes they cannot be kind to each other. And I've definitely had a lot of really shitty workers, like really shitty. And I had one reach out to apologize to me about 3 years after a situation. And it was shocking to get a long text from someone really saying, like, I'm so sorry, I was so awful. I'm like, okay, you need to now text that same thing to these 30 other people.
Yeah.
But it was, you just got to kind of just stay true to you, and, and kind of don't look to the left and the right, and just kind of keep going. And the people will see, we'll see that. And the people that aren't who you need to be surrounding yourself with anyway.
It's pretty fearless. Some good fearless advice. April, you are incredible. Where can everyone, I know you're on Intro, so people can book calls with you on Intro.
And then also at the board, we have office hours. And so there's a handful of us on our site there. And to me, it's just experts on speed dial, which I always wanted to have in my leadership roles, where, there's certain things you can't really talk to your team about or your investors about, and yet you want to get some guidance. And then LinkedIn, link me in, Instagram. There's generally, a lot of knowledge being shared on our channel at the board. And I feel like a lot of what we're doing is hopefully, giving some guidance to up and coming people who are looking at, like, how do I get from here to here? What is that industry about? And to see that it's just really, like I said, it's just a journey, and to be excited about the journey as much as it can be terrifying or stressful or anxiety provoking of, like, when-will. And I look back at my 90s where things moved really slow, and I mean, those days are just over. It just doesn't move that slow anymore, because we just didn't have access like this 24/7 to every single thing that's going on around you. So just navigating that, I think, is something that everyone is learning how to do. Where you can tune out and digitally detox for a bit, and not have the distractions that, quite frankly, can take away from your ability to grow and be creative, or strategize, and put pieces of paper and write and draw. And for me, we start to get really spreadsheet driven, and everything's here. And there's something tactile that really does unlock creativity. And I love, literally, my whole table is like sticky notes and things, and I just have to write, then I have to make bubble letters, and I have to take another color to it, and then it just, like, sticks in my brain. And if it's all just here on a screen and it's all in my notes on my phone, it doesn't feel as deep and connected as I want it to feel. And so those kind of creative days are so critical, no matter what your industry is.
I love a hard notebook.
Yeah,
That's what
completely.
keeps me grounded. Thank you so much for coming.
Pleasure.
You are an
It was really my
incredible
pleasure.
mentor, role model for aspiring current founders.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
You're just doing an amazing job. And so, I love that you reach out. Exactly what you're doing is exactly what people should do.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I tell people. You literally have to just reach out.
Yes.
And the worst thing somebody can say is no, and that means they suck. And then find someone who's better and says yes.
Totally. Or they're just like, I would love to, but I'm really drowning and maybe in
That's
3 months.
fine too. I think it's great to just
yeah.
give somebody a reason. I
I
can't
agree.
because, or even when someone says, can I come on the show? Even if it's just, I'm just not interested in their story, I'll just say this just isn't a fit for the kind of guest that I'm looking for.
1,000%. And, the ghosting makes me insane. I'm a golden rule girl, and I feel like my time is just as valuable as your time.
Always.
And so to me, it's just those are the people you just weed out right away.
Yeah.
But you're going to have those. There's one everywhere. And the mean girls from high school are the mean girls in the office, and the mean girls in the mom group, and they're the mean girls, dropping their daughter at college. Like, they are there. They're not going anywhere. You just navigate around. And I think it's just diverse context, right? Like, don't just stick to an industry and build all around there. There's so many industries that there's so much knowledge being shared, and I think that's what I've loved now is looking back on how I'm really building the board. It's not just marketing, not just beauty or just fashion. No. It's this cross-section of industries and disciplines that you can learn from behaviors happening in healthcare or hospitality and how they relate to wellness or food or technology and innovation and AI across everything, marketing and sales across everything. Like, those are just things that, regardless of what you're selling or marketing, there's skills that you need to learn to market or sell. But just to be open, and all of a sudden you're like, holy, that's where I should be, And so to me, it's just eyes wide open.
Flexibility and openness. I love it. Thank you so
My pleasure.
much. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned into the show. If you like Dare to Be Fearless, make sure to write a review on Apple, as well as let me know who you want to hear next. Follow April on social media. I'll link everything about her, as well as where you can book a call with her on intro in the show notes. And I'll see you next week for a new episode of Dare to Be Fearless.